So for a long time, I just thought the only thing that could explain me was that I'm stupid. And then when I started doing well in school, I literally told people when they talked about my grades that I'm just a stupid person who works really hard. That's the only way I could actually make sense of myself. So I just kind of lived with that idea in my head that I'm a stupid person that works really hard, which is just so sad.
Welcome to Motherhood and ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sun. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, Successful Mama. It's your friend, Patricia Sun. How many times have you heard mindfulness recommended for ADHD brains? And how many times did you roll your eyes after that recommendation? More or less than 184. Mindfulness seems like a really lofty goal for ADHD brains. Almost unattainable. What's the point? I'm never going to sit there totally still and quiet and think about one thing. So why even bother? Then I met Taucha Post on Instagram. Her handle's at adhd.yoga. She posted a funny reel about mindfulness and ADHD and her gorgeous hair, and I immediately messaged her and asked her to be on the podcast. This is before I even had guests on the podcast, and I guess that's an ADHD impulsivity for the win, because I had to know, how does an ADHD brain do mindfulness? And she did not disappoint. We talked so much that I had to make it into 3 episodes because I like to keep our time together in ADHD-friendly chunks. So the next 3 episodes are all about Taucha teaching us about mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Why is it always touted as so great for ADHD brains? And is it really? How can we realistically start being mindful in the day-to-day crazy of motherhood with ADHD? And what are all the myths about mindfulness that give it such a bad rap from our perspective? Get ready to learn about your brain, mama. In this process, we are also going to learn how to take better care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself, you can take care of your family even better. Taucha was a speech therapist with her master's focusing on mindfulness and stuttering, and with her solid background in psychology and neuroscience, Taucha is a wealth of knowledge on how our brains work, which she graciously is about to share with you. Now, Taucha has taken her mindfulness full stop, and she has an online yoga studio where you can take classes anytime, anywhere, which is perfect for ADHD whims. And I just adore her quick mindfulness exercises that she has on Instagram every Monday for free. Go check it out. Today, let's meet Taucha and hear about her story of how she was diagnosed in her 30s. So mamas, let's welcome Taucha to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so just jumping in, tell me a little bit about your diagnosis story. How did you even know this is something I need to look into?
Oh man. Well, that's not a short story, but I'll try. I guess all my life, I kind of felt a little bit different, but I didn't know why. I just always had this vague feeling of differentness. And my brothers had diagnosis of different learning disabilities. I have 2 brothers and a sister, and I felt like the 3 of us could really relate to struggles with school growing up. And our sister was in enrichment, so she was like a gifted kid. So we joked that she was the black sheep of the family. And us 3 with trouble in school, we were not. So from a pretty early age, I felt like just something was vaguely different. And all through school, I really, really struggled. It was really hard. And then in high school, I just decided I wanted to become a vet. So I worked really hard to get good grades to get there. And I just decided it doesn't matter how hard I have to work. I'm just going to do well in school. So for a long time, I just thought the only thing that could explain me was that I'm stupid. And then when I started doing well in school, I literally told people when they talked about my grades that I'm just a stupid person who works really hard. That's the only way I could actually make sense of myself. So I just kind of lived with that idea in my head that I'm a stupid person that works really hard, which is just so sad. So I did high school, I went to university, got my master's in speech therapy and started practicing as a clinician. And for the first couple of years, I found it really tough, but I thought I found it really tough just because I was new. I'm a new clinician. This is a new career. It's just supposed to be tough. I'll get in the swing of things. And then over the years, I got it was hard, but seeing the clients became easier, but the organization stuff behind it did not. And I didn't know why, because I had to plan my own schedule. I had to travel to my clients' homes. I was late all the time. I had a hard time keeping up with notes. I just felt very different. Everybody else seemed to have a very easy time. That was like the easy part of their job. And for me, that was the hard part. I had an assistant and she was very close. And here in Canada, we have like the CBC radio station, and they have a show called The Current. And my friend, my colleague, kept pointing out like weird things that I do that the other speech therapists that she had worked with in the past never did. Weird ways that I organize my time. Like I would write sentences in the middle of the sentence and then like build the sentence around it, like really unorganized. Super odd things. And she would just kind of like, jokingly and affectionately point them out to me. And I'm like, that's weird stuff I do. So I was listening to this episode of The Current, and they had an episode on women and ADHD, like specifically adult women and ADHD, and why they are diagnosed so much later than men and what it usually looks like. And they were interviewing a journalist who's diagnosed when she was 45. Typically, as usual, she was getting diagnosed as her son was getting diagnosed. That's kind of like how adult women generally get diagnosed. Mm-hmm. And just listening to her story, I was like, oh my God, these are all the same problems I have at work. She just sounded like me exactly. She was creative and she was smart and she was getting stuff done. But the stuff, like the underlying basic things that kind of make everything else function, were a real struggle for her, planning and organizing and attention and all that stuff. And I just didn't really realize how that presented in women. So I was listening to that and I was like, that sounds a lot like me. But then I also thought it was kind of like what happens when you you have a headache and you Google the symptoms and then you're convinced you have a brain tumor. Like I just thought I was kind of looking for a scapegoat. Yes. I thought maybe I'm just looking for an excuse. But my colleague, who's so sweet and so perceptive, the next day at work was like, hey, did you listen to The Current yesterday? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that sounded a lot like you. Shit. All right. This is not just in my head. This is it was like an objective observer who had no skin in the game thought the same thing I thought. It was not just me looking for an excuse. It was somebody else's objective observation and also finding the same similarities. So that's like the first time I actually considered ADHD. Like before that, it was just like, I'm dumb. But it still took years to explore like actually getting a diagnosis, because I would go through I think a lot of us go through like cycles of like where we're doing really, really good and we think we're fine. And we're like, oh, it's fine. Yeah, I'm a rock star. This is great. It's okay. Yeah. And then there'd be other times where things would be going so bad that I just didn't have the energy to even look for solutions, Like it's just like, like I just couldn't. I couldn't. The steps of trying to get the money, of trying to find the clinicians, of trying to be on a wait list or like fill out applications. It was just like in those low times, it was just too much. And in the high times, I didn't need it.
Right.
But I knew an occupational therapist who also thought she had ADHD, and she came across a pilot project in Vancouver where I lived, and it was free. There was like a 2-month wait list. I'm like, I can handle 2 months. And
made it this far.
Yeah, I made it this far. I know, right? I can handle 2 months. I was like in my 30s. So I finally just filled out the paperwork, got it done. And got my diagnosis.
Why is there so much paperwork?
So much paperwork. I know, so much freaking paperwork.
I feel like you should know they have ADHD by the fact that they can't fill in all your paperwork.
Right, exactly, right? So much freaking paperwork. I know, and he had to send it so many times. But
anyway, sorry.
No, but you're totally right. Like that in itself is should be at least part of the screening process, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Totally. No, I totally agree. But yeah, so that was the journey. So as a kid, thought I was different, had a vague feeling, convinced I was dumb, heard of ADHD and what it looks like in women, and got the external validation from somebody else, and then finally found the resources that kind of just fell into my lap. So that's how it went.
So when you got that official piece of paper that says you have
ADHD certified.
Yes, your certification.
Yeah.
What were the feelings that were going through your mind when you knew, okay, this is it?
I think a lot of us cycle through a bunch of different emotions. A bunch of different emotions became predominant, at different times in my life. Initially, I was just so relieved, just finally had an explanation, finally had something outside of character flaws that could explain the things that I do. Right. Because beforehand, when I was late for something, or, when I dominated a conversation, or when I forgot about something again, the only way I could make sense of that stuff is all I care about is myself. I'm selfish. I don't care about others. And I'm a bad person. That's the only way I could really make sense of it. I'm dumb and I'm selfish. or lazy, all kinds of stuff that never makes you feel good. So it was nice to have another explanation. Again, just neutral. This is brain chemistry. This is brain chemistry, and this is brain function. And that's it. And you can do the best that you can with that. That already started to make me feel a lot nicer to myself. Like when I was late for an appointment again, sure, I'm frustrated. I do not like this, but this is my brain. And now that I know that, I can put other steps in place. And now that I also have the label, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about even getting a label, but I was thrilled to have a label because it gave me a good starting point. Like now I can find strategies for people with ADHD on how to be more punctual. Before, it was always from a neurotypical perspective, which was just like, try harder, which didn't help in the past.
You clearly don't have these 3 skills.
Yeah.
Just practice these. You'll be fine.
I know, exactly. So yeah, when I first got that diagnosis, there was relief, for sure relief. There was also fear. And the fear was more like, what if it's wrong? What if, because at that point I had done so much reading on ADHD and I was just like so looking forward to having an explanation that I was a little afraid that I actually manipulated the doctors into giving me the diagnosis. So I was a little afraid that it wasn't right. So when I was having a good day and, I was able to wash my dishes and get groceries and make dinner for myself, my brain would be like, you don't have ADHD. Look, you're functioning normal. You don't have it. You're just looking for an excuse. And you actually are a big lazy person. And that really scared me because I didn't want that to be the answer. I was really afraid that that was actually my deep, dark secret is that I'm terrible. So I went through periods of fear and denial, frustration and anger that it wasn't caught any sooner. Because, when you dig up your old report cards and you read them, oh my God. I was just like the DSM right there. Yeah.
It is literally in black and white here.
The ADHD checklist. It's right here. It's right here.
But so, when we were younger, that just wasn't even on the radar. It didn't even cross people's minds that girls could have it. Even just like the whole concept of ADHD just wasn't talked about. I mean, it existed, but people just didn't talk about it. And then certainly not for women. But I feel the same way. I read my comments on my report card and I'm like, y'all. Yeah,
I know.
Really?
Right. I know. So I saw that. So there was also, the frustration and anger that it wasn't caught sooner. But honestly, I've made peace with that now because I guess this is a little side note. When I think back of the resources about ADHD that were available for people with ADHD when I was a kid, and when I think about the things that they knew about ADHD when I was a kid, like in the 90s, they are not the resources and they are not the things that we know now.
No,
not at all. And so what would have happened? Best case scenario, they would have given me some medications without any explanation and told me that's the only thing that could fix me.
True.
And if I felt that didn't work, because we know now through research that even though medication is effective, it is not the whole picture and it is not the only solution.
It's one tool.
It was one tool, one really small tool. So I would have thought if those medications weren't working properly or weren't working as well as they were on some days as others, that was it. That was it for me. There are no other solutions. There are no other things I can seek out. I wouldn't have had a full picture of what ADHD is, what it looks like, how medications come into play, and how their effectiveness can fluctuate given your circumstances, your hormone levels, all that other stuff. I wouldn't have had any of that information. And I probably would have had a negative label because a lot of my friends who had diagnoses at a young age, basically all that happened to them is they were given medications, they were told that they had ADHD, and they were told to lower their expectations. And if I had that kind of message from a young age, like, oh, you have ADHD, you can't have the things other people have, I wouldn't have done the things that I'd done. Like I wouldn't have gone to university. I wouldn't have gotten my master's. I would have, even though I did think I was dumb, I still believed I could overcome it. And if I had ADHD, I'd be like, no, it's too steep. The climb's too steep. I can't do it. Initially, all I could think of is like, I should have known sooner. But that was with the idea in my head that I could have known the things in the past that I do know right now. And that information wasn't even discovered yet. So it was like an erroneous train of thought. So now I'm fine. I'm fine that I got diagnosed at a later age because I'm old enough now to have made my own decisions about my care, to seek out the information I wanted and taken more control and autonomy when it came to my treatment. So now I'm very grateful that I got it in my 30s, as hard as the struggle was along the way. I'm kind of glad.
Hey, Mama, have you been over to my website and grabbed any of the free ADHD resources I've got? you can make your mornings more peaceful, overcome time blindness hurdles, learn ways to treat your ADHD beyond the obvious medication option, or grab a copy of all of my favorite ADHD resources on one page. You can snag these all on my website at patriciasung.com/resources, and I'll email you the PDF or the video. Now, don't go putting in your spammy junk email, okay? I'm not going to send you junk. I email you once, maybe twice a week. For sure, I'll send you a note about this week's podcast topic, and if I'm having a particularly organized week, I might email you again about what's working for my ADHD this week, or venting about whatever executive function disaster happened. Your inbox is where I spill more of the beans, and if you change your mind, you can always unsubscribe, right? Plus, I really love hearing back from you, so write me an email back. Tell me what's going on in your life, or what you want to learn about next. So go grab those free goodies, and I'll see you in your inbox. So when you look at the difference between what you know now and what you didn't know before, how do you do things differently?
Because I have ADHD, and because I did go through that period where my only way of motivating myself was to beat myself up and to hold things over my head, that habit is still very much there because I was convinced for a long time that that's the only way I can get my brain to do anything. So that's still very much there. I'm trying to override it, and I'm a lot better at overriding it now. But I can be a lot nicer to myself when I notice that I'm doing things like wasting my time, not using it efficiently. I have more strategies in place. One of the things that was really, really important with managing and treating ADHD was really the first step is like actually accepting the diagnosis. So that denial phase of my reaction was super counterproductive, because if you don't really believe you have ADHD, you're not going to really accept yourself for the ways your brain presents itself in its day-to-day life. And then you won't look for the ADHD friendly strategies of working around it. So the biggest piece was just learning to accept that this is just the way my brain works, and also not having a whole lot of drama about it, not being angry, not making it mean anything about me. This is just my brain chemistry, and this is its output. This is its manifestation in my daily life, and that's it. So now, in very practical terms, that turned into using timers for everything, using reminders for everything, using a planner all through all my education. Like I had a lot of education, and I didn't use a planner the whole time. The extent I know.
How did you survive?
Writing things on my hand and in the margins of whatever notes were in front of me at the time. That was.
I am so impressed that you graduated. I don't know what I would do without writing stuff in a book.
I know, but it worked for me at the time. Like I would just, like I knew, like I had a system, and that was the other thing. Actually, this was the other thing that came with the acceptance piece. If a system works for you, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look like anyone's system. If it works, it works, right? You don't have to change it. Like in university, writing my homework on the notes from that class, at the end of my notes from that class, worked for me. I knew that was the system I had. If I was going to work on my cognitive behavioral science notes, if I was going to review for those lecture notes, I knew that what I had to do, or like if I was going to look for my homework, I knew that what I had to do was look to my most recent note. It's an unconventional system, but every time I'm going to be working on cognitive behavioral science, I'll have my notes with me. Whereas a planner, who the hell knows where I'm going to leave that thing? Like it's going to, like I might need it and it'll be in my dorm room, or I would have needed it and I left it in my bag, which I left out of friends, So if it works for you, it works for you. That was another piece. So that is a big difference from when I got the official diagnosis with ADHD and really started accepting it. That's when I was like, okay, I don't need my systems to look the same way as other people's systems. And that was like really liberating because some of the things that I did actually worked. I also don't organize my email. I use the search function because when I organize my emails into folders, I can't remember if I put this person's email in their folder or in the topic we were talking about, And so now I just search and I find everything. It's fine. So that was another thing with ADHD, just allowing the unconventional systems to stick around if they work. Medication was another thing. I took medications. They're very helpful. You do have to be very open-minded. I mean, it's another very controversial thing. So I would recommend for people who are considering medication or are not sure about it to make sure that whatever you decide, you like your reasons for picking your medications, and it's not coming from any place of obligation, any pressure from anybody else, whether you take them or not.
Yeah.
Whatever choice, just make sure you like that choice. And the other thing that I liked about medication is they're in and out of your system. So, I mean, I can take them and then I could decide not to. They're not forever. Nothing is permanent.
Right.
That's what I really like about my medications. Like, I was reluctant to take them. I felt like it meant admitting that I'm weak, admitting that I'm broken. And I'm not. I just have a different brain. And it's not even leveling out the playing field, because people say like medication is leveling the playing field. No, it isn't. Like, do you know
maybe
how
like
much?
Smoothed it a little more?
Maybe a bit.
Like an
yeah,
inch?
like maybe we have a little bit of like a ramp now as opposed to a cliff that we have to go to. But still, we have to deal with all the emotional baggage and all of like the shame and everything else that came with our history of ADHD. We have to deal with so much more. So it's not leveling out the playing field, but I mean, it's a boost. It helps. The thing that I like to keep in mind is like, I'm the one in control of them. They're not in control of me. I can decide when to take them and when not to. So that was another thing that was different when I got my diagnosis, was considering taking the medications.
Yeah. I think that's something you say, like, it's just hard for people to wrap their head around, because when you have a physical ailment, you can see it and you don't feel bad about fixing that problem, because it's like physically I can view it.
Right.
Like, even when I think about putting on glasses, it's like, well, I can tell that my eyeballs are broken. So I need some glasses. So I don't feel bad about that. When you can't see the inside of your brain, there's just all this doubt and fear in there. And I love what you said, like, I'm in control. I decide, like, yeah, stimulants are in your system for, depending on which one you take, 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours. And if you hate it, then you don't take it tomorrow. You find a different option. Like when we have ADHD, we're like this all or nothing spectrum. Totally. We think like we took it one time and now I'm going to take it forever till I'm 173.
Yeah.
No, like you literally can change your mind tomorrow. It is totally okay. Give it a try. What do you think? How'd it go? Adjust.
Yeah.
You're not signing yourself up for forever unless you want to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's actually like when you're going into medication trials, you can take a second to take a step back and like ground yourself in that knowledge. Like, I am the one in control here. I'm going to try these out to see if they help. And I can decide if they do or not. And I can decide whether to continue or not. And that's it. That's it. And even if you do decide to take them, that's still, again, not forever. You may find that you may make enough changes in your habits, like in your strategies, in your food, and your vitamins, and your exercise, and all that other stuff, that you might not really benefit from medications anymore in the future. It might get to a point like that. I know sometimes it does for people. And then you don't have to take them. And that's it. Like, nothing is forever. Nothing.
It is not. Sometimes we wish it was.
Yeah, sometimes.
But it's not.
No, exactly.
Okay. So when we were emailing back and forth about talking today, you said to me, being an ADHDer means I know the struggle of living with the disparity between what you know you're supposed to do and what you're actually doing. It can be frustrating and it often leads to giving up, but it doesn't have to. I want to hear more on that.
That's so funny. Because in the email, when you quoted that back to me, I'm like, when did I say this?
Well, I don't remember. I'm like, man, I said that. That was so good. I'm glad I said that. Don't remember it all.
I don't remember. ADHD, memory problems. So I find that that's like one of the ADHD curses I find is always having like that, just knowing the stuff that you should be doing and then seeing what you're doing and seing that they don't match, even though you know so much. Like you should have a protein-rich diet for breakfast. You know you should get good sleep. You should not spend as much time on your phone. We know these things. You should get exercise. You know that, but you don't. Because inertia, because of just forgetting to use the strategies when you need them in real time, because of overwhelm, because of all this other stuff. There's always that disparity because of all that executive function that makes the switch from knowing to do it and actually doing it. There's always this mismatch. And it can become very frustrating. ADHDers are really good at collecting evidence of all the ways we failed in life. We have so much built up shame, so much embarrassment about all of the stuff that's apparently easy that isn't easy. So we have all this shame. So when we have this list and we know very clearly what we should do and we see that we're not doing it, we have a choice. We can either use this as proof that we'll never get any better, or you can just decide that I know that these things are available to me. I know that these strategies will help me, and I can chip away at them at my own pace and expect to fail and decide that failure just means my ADHD brain got the best of me like I knew it would, and try again. So my ADHD coach talks about consistency versus persistence. ADHDers are notoriously bad for being consistent. Mm-hmm. That's what our brain does.
And yet we still try to do it.
And still we try. I know. Every year, we try. We expect tomorrow is the first day I'll be a different person for the rest of my life. Like we always have goals like that. But I think if we accept, again, part of that acceptance piece, that we're just going to, like I think Ed Hallowell says, ADHDers are consistently inconsistent. That's just part of it.
Yep. So
if we just go into a goal expecting to be inconsistent, then when we have that evidence that we would in the past perceive as a big failure and a huge character flaw, you can decide, actually, this is just my ADHD showing up. I'm going to try again. Got the better of me today. Maybe it won't tomorrow.
Mama, this is a great place to pause. Be sure to hit subscribe so that the next 2 episodes show up right away, because that's one less thing to think about. Next time, we'll learn what mindfulness is and isn't, why it's good for ADHD brains, and where to start, and how do we incorporate it into our daily life. Talk to you soon, Successful Mama. Thank you for listening to Motherhood in ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodinadhd.com.